Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Let's talk about two major moves from Ripple that signal very serious long-term positioning. And both of them occurred yesterday, on Monday. And it's interesting, on a day like yesterday, a terrible day in the markets, right? Price for just about everything down to a notable degree. Fear up substantially. And that's happening on a day where we're getting additional signal from one of the most influential firms in the XRP ecosystem. They're highlighting things that should absolutely, I firmly believe, it's just more things that absolutely will help to ensure the long-term viability of XRP and the XRP ledger. So I do want to talk about why these things specifically matter to you if you hold XRP. And look, these are not hype announcements. They're strategic plays aimed at institutional adoption and digital asset infrastructure. And they absolutely could ultimately support higher XRP prices and higher XRP demand over time. I mean, look at these headlines. Here's one from the block. Ripple's crypto investments hit $4 billion with acquisition of wallet tech firm Palisade. And so Palisade, that's the latest acquisition here. I'll get into it as we get into the video. But yeah, $4 billion from multiple firms that have been acquired by Ripple. At this point, it could not be more obvious. Ripple is a true juggernaut of the crypto space. And XRP is at the core of everything that they do. Which is why back in 2017, when I was learning about this, I instantly viewed having Ripple in the ecosystem, even though they hold a really large amount of XRP, and it was even bigger back then, I viewed it as a net plus because Ripple has the most to lose if this doesn't go well. And then there are a bunch of people that disagreed with me, and I think that time has proven that my perspective was correct, and I'm sure most of you guys, pretty much all you guys, felt the same as me on that. But there are people insisting that, no, it's too big of a risk. Ripple holding that much, they could just dump on your heads and blah, 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 except for reality says, no, that's not what's happening. And then there was this headline. Ripple expands U.S. institutional offering with introduction of digital asset spot prime brokerage. And ultimately, I actually like this headline more. Ripple's new Ripple Prime platform puts XRP in Wall Street's hands. Yeah, it does. That's a fair assessment. This is putting XRP directly into the hands of Wall Street. But, before going further, I do want to be clear. I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. All right, so first, again, the first story here. Yes, as I cited in the intro, Ripple just acquired Palisade, a wallet and institutional custody technology firm. And so with this deal, Ripple's total crypto infrastructure investment, like I said, it's now reached $4 billion. And that's a figure cited specifically by Ripple, by the way. And what does that tell us? Well, it's very clear Ripple isn't just building a payments network. I mean, it's building the full plumbing of institutional crypto. Okay? It's wallet tech, secure custody, multi-chain support, institutional access. This, by the way, and it's at the core of why it matters. This is the architecture that's needed to bring traditional finance into digital assets at scale. And back in 2023, I pointed out that Ripple executives like Brad Garlinghouse, I noticed it right away. Executives like Brad Garlinghouse completely changed the way that they would describe their own company, Ripple. Completely changed the way that they would describe it. If you're like, what does Ripple do? Well, Ripple's no longer being touted as a fintech company specializing in cross-border payments. If you ask Brad Garlinghouse what Ripple does, that's not what he's going to say. And he's not going to do that. The tired old example. If you want to move $10,000 today from the United States to Japan, the fastest way to do it is to get a suitcase of $10,000 and fly it there on a plane. That whole thing. He used to say that all the time. You don't hear that from him anymore. But, all of that was the focal point of the old pitch for like Ripple, the company, right? Yeah, but now it's all about crypto and blockchain solutions for enterprise customers. That's the focus. That's the way that they're talking now. And so, I mean, it's clear that Ripple just wants to be they want to be like the foundational layer for all things crypto. Like, I think that's a pretty fair way to articulate it, frankly. And they're absolutely finding success with this approach. And so for XRP holders, yeah, this matters. If Ripple controls more infrastructure, it's easier for banks and asset managers and payment firms to interact with digital assets, including XRP. Again, XRP is at the center of everything that Ripple does. It's behind every consideration that Ripple goes through. And so you can have the best technology in the world, but without secure custody, which is what Ripple's heavily in now, and without compliant execution and enterprise grade access, global adoption doesn't happen. You actually do need those things, especially, again, if you're talking about on an institutional level. So Ripple investing literally billions of dollars into this tech stack, it shows commitment. And it positions XRP as part of a maturing financial system rather than just a speculative token, drifting on sentiment. And not that there's anything wrong with speculation. I think that, frankly, I won't go too deep in this because I did a whole riff on it probably within the last few days, but I really don't think that speculators get the credit they deserve. They provide liquidity and life to markets, which attracts interest on an institutional level on top of that. So it's all complementary. But I do think that speculators like you and I, we absolutely should get a whole lot more credit than we do. But that's just an aside. But the second development, and this is the coolest damn thing. I love seeing this. So the second development, and frankly, this one's arguably even bigger in the short term. Ripple has launched its digital asset prime brokerage service for U.S. institutions. It's called Ripple Prime. We knew that there was a name change because they bought Hidden Road. Then they renamed it Ripple Prime. And so we've known a certain amount about this. I've made some videos talking about this. But the big news on Monday is that this is live for U.S. institutions, right? So again, it's called Ripple Prime. And it does give big players the ability to trade digital assets over the counter, OTC, and integrate crypto liquidity into traditional finance tools. So basically, Ripple is creating an institutional on-ramp. It's the same kind of infrastructure that firms like Coinbase and Galaxy and other Wall Street primes use for professional trading. But now it's here for crypto, specifically XRP, by the way, as is accurately cited in this article. Look at this. I think it was this spot right here. The new platform, Ripple Prime, now enables OTC spot trading for dozens of major digital assets, including XRP and Ripple's RLUSD stablecoin. So yeah, you'll love to see it. So you know why that's such a big freaking deal? Because when institutions have legitimate compliant infrastructure to access digital assets, which frankly wasn't going to happen in the United States without the administration change. So the election last November turns out that mattered. Well, it turns out capital flows actually follow. Yes, in real life, they actually do. And when capital flows into this asset class, it's not, it's not short-term retail chasing headlines. This is different. It's long-term liquidity and allocation. So over time, that tends to lift the assets that sit at the center of these systems. And XRP being supported here means it's perfectly positioned to play a role in institutional liquidity and settlement and trading, so on and so forth, rather than just sitting on the sidelines. And it's also the case that as Ripple moves the $3 trillion in annual flows from Ripple Prime to the XRP ledger, which is what they've stated publicly they're doing, and it'll be, I don't know what the timeline is, but they're doing it in phases. As that $3 trillion, as much of it as possible, gets transferred over to the XRP blockchain, please keep in mind, XRP itself will be required for every single transaction out of that $3 trillion annually. And that's a massive boost to real world XRP utility. I mean, this is not a small thing. So XRP is required for all of that, and XRP is also now available to Wall Street. You gotta love it, folks. And so, you put both pieces together. I mean, billions invested into custody and wallet tech and the launch of a regulated institutional brokerage. It's pretty damn obvious how big of a deal this is, right? I don't need to spell it out further than that, I'll assume. Ripple is positioning itself not just as a blockchain company, but as a digital finance infrastructure company. Enterprise level stuff, folks, like I keep saying. And, you know, we know institutions tend to move slowly, but when they do move, they look for trusted rails. That's why the regulatory clarity is so important. And they're also, of course, looking for secure execution. And Ripple's among the most trustworthy of businesses in the entire crypto space. You know, Ripple is that rail, is what I'm getting at here. And so, you know, price will always be influenced near term by market sentiment. And of course, you know, macro liquidity, crypto cycles, of course. But what we're seeing is, I mean, it's a foundation for real adoption. You know, a token like XRP backed by real institutional infrastructure, I mean, that's not what you get from hype coins, folks. This is on a different level. This is where the big boys play, okay? This is, the adults are here, okay? And this is about the long-term viability of XRP and the XRP ledger. Absolutely. And so if you're holding XRP, I mean, yeah, just know the rails that are being built in a very meaningful way. These are real big developments that are actually happening right now. And so, of course, as institutional capital continues to scale in, yeah, XRP is being positioned to catch a massive part of that flow. And all of this is happening, again, these two major stories, major developments, both from Ripple yesterday, in a day where people are panicking. And I'm reading this, getting the big picture, I'm just like, oh my God, this is just fantastic. It's just fantastic to see. It's just, you know, more things that help to ensure that XRP will continue to be a winner in the crypto space. And you love to see it. How could you not? This is a big deal here, folks. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.